The social media stuff is out of the way. I'm actually opening up today's stream with another video to react to, I guess. So again, this is Sebi Plays, and I watched like the first 5 minutes, and I was like, maybe I can actually make a further discussion video about it because I do like Genshin, I do like Dehya, and I think Dehya needs some fixing. So definitely would be worth a some sort of video. I did react to Sebi Place once before with the whole like interview thing about Endgame and all that stuff, and that was kind of fun actually. So I thought I'd do it here this time around, just a character for Genshin, which is Dehya, the most recent character that came out, 5 stars. She's brand new and everything, and of course, yeah, she's been met with some grimace and all that stuff, and much of negative criticisms, and people are, you know, in far cry for a buff of sorts for Dehya. While I do agree with that, I mean, we'll see. I mean, but in this video, like it seems like we're gonna see ideas of how she can be buffed and all that stuff. Just for again, like it's just a further discussion. So yeah, but just to make it clear, this is by Sevi Plays. Go check her out. I like her content. She's very, sorry, she's very informational and all that stuff. Very, very informative. I do like how she does her content, her style of content, and all that stuff. So that's why I feel like this type of stuff resonates with me, and that's likely why I wanted to do another reaction video like this. So let's go right into it. Let me just check the audios first. Let me play the first few seconds just to make sure everything's all right.
Hey everyone, it's Sevi and welcome to class.
All right,
Where
I'm
we're
gonna
going
talk
to talk
over it, see if
about
it's
Dia.
good, and it should be
I made
good.
my initial
Take
Dia
around,
guide where I did give some
should be
of my
double the
thoughts
audio
on
for
how
me,
she
and then
performs, but in this video, we're going to go a bit deeper. We are going to break down the
I
flaws
like
of
the
Dia's kit.
PowerPoint
We all
stuff. I
know that
like
she
it.
has
It's very
issues, and again, I
reminiscent.
did go through some of them, but here I want
I
to
love it.
particularly focus on some of her main problem areas, and then as we go along, think about proposing potential alternatives or potential fixes to what could have made Dia's kit a better version of what it currently is. I guess in a thought experiment type thing, reimagine what she could be. So a few disclaimers before we get into it. This is not a guide. Second, this is not aimless bashing. If you're new to my content, I don't like bashing characters. I generally don't. I'm usually very optimistic about characters. So if I do have negative things to say about a character, I always make sure they are backed up with evidence, that it's not unreasonable, and that it's not excessive. I really like Dia as a character, and we're gonna keep it with that in mind. I don't work for Hoyoverse. I am doing this because I want to give my take, present some opinions, present some ideas, and then maybe even like open up discussions, whether in the comments section or anyone who watches this video if it brings out ideas for you. Next is that I might miss some things. I will be going over.
I think she glossed over this, but yeah, that's kind of funny. No, I think she glossed over it, but whatever, it's there. So the unlikely Dehya will be buffed point is, I think, definitely a strong outcome because there's stuff already in her constellations that does resolve some things, and I think that's like Hoyle versus idea of fixing her or whatever. So in their eyes, it's just like, oh, once you get more of her, then you'll have fun with her and stuff like that, which is kind of like scummy, of course, because that does create incentive for putting in real money to get Dehya with more of with those constellations, obviously, because you gotta do more polls, you gotta use those primo gems, and primo gems obviously do take real money as well. So the more you summon, the more likely you'll get Dehya, and the more Dehya you get, the more constellations you get, which supposedly helps clean up her kit. And so I think even so, I think she still needs fixing either way because of the fundamentals I think are flawed which I believe she will present here. Like I said, I've already watched the first 5 minutes of it, and I was like, and that's why we're here. So anyway, all right.
Over her main problem areas. That being said, there are certain things I will focus on and some things that I might brush over. Next, there may be better ideas out there, such as yours. Like, I might point out this problem of potential fix, but maybe your idea would have a bit more cohesiveness or a bit more logic. Feel free to comment your ideas as we go along. This is an open discussion. This is a classroom. Class is in session, and we're doing it the old school way with some PowerPoints and like your online class teacher.
Like I said, I do like the PowerPoint. It's very clear. It's very just like, you know what? It's so simple, very reminiscent of classrooms, right? I mean, I sometimes miss the days of being in a classroom and sitting down and have a teacher just like go over things and all that stuff. We even had like the overhead projector. Oh my God, that thing was just yeah, she's gonna school us with some Dehya fixes and ideas. Yeah, very reminiscent of that feeling, which I do. I admittedly do like. It's kind of nostalgic, so I kind of like this idea. So maybe I should incorporate that into more of my Hawk Talk videos, man. Because there are times where it's like it's hard to discuss your ideas in a very digestible and cohesive and just like clear way that I just might as well make a fucking PowerPoint out of it, right? Just so like you can see what I'm saying and I can kind of like stay on track and stuff like that. Maybe I should do that. I'm honestly. But yeah, anyway,
Right here.
let's continue.
All right. So all that being said, let's dive into the video. So like I said, Dia has several issues. I'm sure most, if not all of us, are already aware of this at this point. One main issue is that Dia's role feels unclear. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, there are players who claim and feel that Dia was built to be a defensive support, a tank, a damage sponge of sorts. Although, when you take a deeper look, which we will be doing, we'll realize that, well, she's not defensive enough, and her defensive support utilities have a bunch of flaws to them that make it feel insufficient. And honestly, the same can be said about Dia's offensive support. We all have some idea already about her damage output, and basically, she's underwhelming in both defense and offense. Where does that leave us? Well, it feels like her role is unclear, and more than that, it feels like her kit is unfinished. In fact, when you look at her Z0 kit, and then you look at her constellations, it kind of hits you like, her constellations seem to implement things that I would have wanted to see in the base kit. I think her C1 to C5 kit should have been her base kit. Throughout this video, I might be pointing out some areas where I think her constellations should have fit into her base kit, but yeah, that's my general sentiment. Dia. I thought I was done feeling things about Dia's kit when I posted the guide, but no. Okay, we are back in the bargaining stage. Anyway, so the first part of Dia's kit that I want to tackle are her defensive capabilities. I do think that there was some merit to trying to turn Dia into a new form of defense. So if we look at the current forms of defense that we already have, the closest comparison would probably be that of a shielder. And we already have several good shielders. Like, shielder characters, they are valuable, they are solid, we have good shielders among our roster, and we even have a shielder Archon, Zhongli. Now, what are shields trying to accomplish? First of all, they offer interruption resistance, and second, they negate damage. Or in another sense, they take damage for you so that your active character doesn't take damage as long as the shield is active. Now, let's compare that to what Dia is trying to offer. So shields offer interruption resistance. Dia also offers interruption resistance. Shielders negate damage, or rather shields negate damage and take damage for you, and that's what Dia also tries to do. When she redirects damage towards herself, she takes that damage for the active character. She doesn't redirect all of it, but she redirects around half of it. What else do shields do? Well, shields follow you around. Compare that to Dia, it becomes circle impact. However, shields can break. And this is one key thing. I think that Dia's form of defense is like trying to improve or trying to at least give an alternative to, right? Instead of a shield that can break because it's taking too much damage, what Dia offers is something that can't break. Her field can't break. It's going to be there for the entire duration that it's intended to. But given these, does Dia suffice? Does she fulfill what a shielder is trying to do? If we take a closer look at it, well, then that's when the problems start to appear. Let's talk about the key things that Dia's defensive utility tries to offer, starting with her interruption resistance. So what does it actually do as of now? Golden Forged Form, which is basically her highest level of
Let me go back and point out a few things. Not heard, but like some of the points. So or just one point at least. So circle impact. What does that mean? So for those who don't know, she is just referring to the fact that her skill forms a circle, and you gotta stay in the circle in order to take in the effects of whatever the kit offers. So in Dea's case, the circle offers some form of damage mitigation, which is basically reducing damage that is incoming, and so it tries to reduce the damage that's being inflicted on your current character. And also, along with that, Dea is also taking damage as an idea of trying to also reduce the amount of damage coming in as well. So she's kind of like a unique form of a meat shield, I guess you could say. But of course you gotta stay in a circle. And sometimes, well, another circle sort of mechanics, right? One flaw that you'd tend to find is that a lot of enemies, and especially the big enemies, right, like to punch you around, and you get knocked out of the circle, right? And that means if you're out of the circle, you're not taking in the effect as of current, and you're losing out on precious seconds of being in the circle's effects and stuff like that. Now, in this case, of course, this does offer interruption resistance, like as pointed out here and as pointed out in the video that she had with, the one of the characters taking punches from the big dragon-looking thing, and therefore, theoretically, you stay in the circle. Problem with that, though, in other cases, is that when you're in the Spiral Abyss, which is the hardest form of content, or I guess other combat-based sort of events in general, enemies, when you kill these set of enemies that are currently in the circle, then there are other enemies that pop up in a different area. So you gotta like either kite them to your circle, or you gotta like just say fuck it and go to them and kill them. And especially when it's on a time-based thing, you gotta kill the enemies fast. So that's why you're forced to kind of just like move to them, and then you can pretty much like try to just get through the enemies in order to beat the time and stuff like that. Now, granted, yes, Dea can put down another circle, but then it really depends on how weak the enemy is, what the pool of enemy is like, what types of enemies offer excuse me, is offered to you. You can only do that once more, so that means the next set of enemies that pop into a different area, you gotta go to them again, and then you can't do anything about it. So the whole circle thing does have its flaws, no matter how you look at it. So it really depends, right? So of course, this does work better with single enemies, right? If you're facing the one enemy, big enemy boss, okay, that does work better. But even with all that said, and all that being possible, I think she points out the flaws still are within Dea of in Dea's kit.
problems start to appear. Let's talk about the key things that Dia's defensive utility tries to offer, starting with her interruption resistance. So what does it actually do as of now? Golden Forged Form, which is basically her highest level of interruption resistance, it gives infinite poise. And infinite poise is extremely valuable because it basically means you don't get interrupted. Like Magukenki could be attempting to slice you in half, and your Ganyu is still going to charge her shot. You know, as long as she's still alive, as long as she still has HP left, she's going to be unbothered. And it's actually pretty impressive when it's active because your character, it really doesn't get interrupted. However, when you look at the mechanics of this state of infinite poise, let's start with the timing of her Golden Forged form. First of all, Dia's Golden Forged form only lasts 9 seconds from her skill cast. For reference, her skill field lasts 12 seconds. So, if we compare that, there is an awkward 3-second difference where Dia does offer some interruption resistance, but since it's not the full thing, it still kind of feels like you're being cut short. Like, it still feels insufficient, because that Golden Forge form doesn't last the entirety of her skill. And then if we get more technical about it, the duration of the Golden Forged form isn't even tied to the presence of the field. The Golden Forged form's timer starts upon the field cast. But remember that Dia's burst can actually interrupt the field. Now imagine this. You take Dia, you put down her skill, and she activates her Golden Forged form, and she activates her skill field, and then some seconds later, she comes on field, does her burst. When she finishes it, she puts back the field. At that point, the Golden Forged form would pretty much have expired. Like an easy fix that I would propose.
Yep. So the magic of the interruption resistance comes from the effect called, yep, like as she pointed out, Golden Forge, right? And as she already pointed out, the Golden Forge effect doesn't last equally as the circle itself. So you have, like I said, the sort of the 3-second gap right there, and not to mention, right? It's not entirely synchronized with the circle, right? So as she was saying with Dia's burst or ult, whatever you want to call it, what Dia does during her burst is that she pockets it, right? She pockets the circle, right? And that, in turn, of course, takes away the effects of the circle for that moment, right? For the entire moment, she pockets the circle, and then she starts punching, right? She does her punch ult thing, and while she's doing that, though, unfortunately, the Golden Forge doesn't get pocketed along with that. That's why I say it's not entirely synchronized. That's a huge problem in that, because there's a huge flaw in that, because because the Golden Forge is not synchronized, when she pockets it, she's also running the timer on the Golden Forge. Therefore, she's taking away precious time of that interruption and resistance. So as she's punching, she's taking away time, and not to mention her punches suck because the scaling is so bad, and so you're really doing that over nothing. So why? I mean, but why even do the burst? I mean, I believe it because it's supposed to extend the damage mitigation, yes, which is nice, but that Golden Forge effect is really what the star is to me, right? It gives you, it gives you the opportunity to do all your attacks without worrying, because because when you get punched around, you're not gonna flinch. So that way, when you're trying to do your charge attack or whatever it is, your big wind up or whatever, you're not gonna get interrupted. But then it goes all the way back to the shield, right? It all does that. Plus, it follows you around. So that's why you're still better off doing a shield anyway. I'm already gonna say it, even though she's probably gonna say it again and somewhere in the video. But having a shield is just more efficient anyway, because it does all of that and it follows you around. Yeah, and you don't have to really worry about the whole circle thing, and then no one pockets the shield for a moment. That's ridiculous. So it's like this weird thing that's going on with this effect here, especially with the Golden Forge. The so again, when she pockets it during her burst slash ult, the golden forge state doesn't get pocketed, unfortunately. So that's why there is a synchronization problem with this effect, along with the main circle in question.
Honestly, is to just make that golden forged form last with the field.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, exactly. So the fix here that she is proposing is to make the effect just last the last other 3 seconds too. Like, why not? Like, that's supposed to be her kit in the first place. So no, why not make that the whole thing? But it looks like here in C2 that duration does extend upon recast. So I think, yeah, because like I said, Dea's skill can be casted twice, so that means you can technically, yeah, you could use that as an opportunity to move the circle to somewhere else. So I guess also in turn, well, I guess we should take a look at the constellation stuff later on too, just to really make sure. But if this is true here, that this Golden Forge does get extended as well, then yeah, I mean that does support the point of that constantly you need constellations to help fix her. So yeah, C4. Anyway, so so again, Hoyoverse is trying to make that incentive like, oh, you can spend some more cash to fix her, right? You want her fixed? You gotta put in that money, you know? Oh, but it all goes back to the stupid interview, right? Oh, but we don't want to create excessive anxiety and shit like that. So
If the field is there, the infinite poise is there. It's not on a separate timer, it's just part of the field buffs. Another thing is that I would take DSC2 and build it into her base kit.
oh, I see. So it's okay. So she's just basically saying, why not just make that C2 effect just in her kit? So again, it still supports the point of, oh, you gotta get constellations to fix her kit.
And for reference, I'm specifically
Basically,
talking about how
duplicates.
her recast extends the duration of the skill field. Right now, her recast mainly repositions the field, but it doesn't extend the duration and it doesn't refresh the duration either. So I think it would be really good if she were actually able to extend the duration of that field. The next major part of Dia's defensive capabilities is her damage mitigation.
Oh, there we
And
go.
when I say mitigation, I mean mitigation that is in reality just redirection. So what it does is that it redirects damage to Dia. When the active character takes damage from an enemy, instead of taking the whole lot, it takes half of it and then redirects it to Dia. So Dia takes that damage over a duration of time. And then Dia counteracts the damage that is redirected to her by using self-healing. But when Dia gets damage redirected to her, it does not inherently get reduced unless she procs the passive. So when Dia recasts her skill or does her burst, she procs the passive that reduces the damage she takes or the damage that's redirected.
Yeah, so again, there's more of this not synchronization that's happening with what she's supposed to be doing. So not only the Golden Forge, right? I think that's pretty I believe that's called. But yeah, Golden Forge, right? Is not only not synchronized, but this other effect that also is supposed to be a part of her kit that doesn't work. It doesn't work entirely in synchronization because that let's see, yeah, because it says it lasts for 6 seconds, and that's supposed that's another thing that she's supposed to be doing, and it only lasts for this long. That's a really bad part on Hoyoverse for making this a thing. It's like, why do all this stuff? It just doesn't make sense. It just represents more problems than any sort of balance that they probably had in their head.
Defensive capabilities is her damage mitigation. And when I say mitigation, I mean instead of taking the whole lot, it takes half of it and then redirects it to Dia. So Dia takes that damage over a duration of time. And then Dia counteracts the damage that is redirected to her. It does not inherently get reduced unless she procs the passive. So when Dia recasts her skill or does her burst, she procs the passive that reduces the damage she takes or the damage that's redirected to her by 60%. And that passive lasts 6 seconds. It's there, but the thing is, like, it needs extra steps to get to, and it doesn't last for very long. So in all honesty, like, it's kind of difficult to feel, and it's in yet another awkward spot of timing where extra steps, weird duration doesn't match up, and it could have been simpler and smoother. The other thing is that Dia does not heal anyone else. And I'm not saying that Dia should be a team healer. I'm not saying she should be a healer. I'm just saying that because Dia does not heal anyone else, and she's only taking like half of the active character's damage, you still end up very much needing a healer on your team. It doesn't feel sufficient. She's not healing anyone else, but the rest of the team is still taking a considerable amount of damage. And then Dia's own self-healing does have downtime, and you may have experienced this, or it may not be a problem for you, but she can very much die off field. Some pretty simple fixes. First of all, that her skill redirects more damage to herself. Right now we're sitting at 50%. If that goes up to 70, 75, or even 90%, I think that would be a vast improvement and would actually mitigate the need for a healer. And another fix I would give is just that it reduces damage for Dia all throughout. You know, don't make it extra steps. Don't make it this small separate timer window of 6 seconds. Just if the field is there, let Dia reduce the damage that she takes as well. And then there's this, which is better uptime on self-healing, whether this is through a shorter cooldown or a longer duration. I just think that if Dia is actually taking more damage from the active character, like, she needs to be more self-sufficient. She will need improved self-healing as well. Okay.
Okay, so there was a point I wanted to go back and see if I'm not like hearing anything else or whatever, but she does say along the during the does not heal anyone else point, she was like, oh, but it's not like I'm gonna make her a healer, but she also kind of just like goes on and says like, oh, but that she doesn't heal anyone else, which is I don't know. So that's why I wanted to sort of review on that to make sure, like, if I'm not
damage, you still end up very much needing a healer on your team. It does.
Yeah, like that's a kind of a weird, confusing point to me. It's like, yeah, okay, like you say that she's not, or like you're not trying to
And I'm not saying that Dia should be a team healer. I'm not saying she should be a healer. I'm just saying that because Dia does not heal anyone else, and she's only taking like half of the active character's damage, you still end up very much needing a healer on your team.
So I think I'm getting what she's trying to get. So yeah, she's just trying to make a point that because it's not like she's healing anyone else, so why do all this like weird doohickey like backwards ass shit with the whole like, oh, her passive only lasts 6 seconds, oh, her self healing has also some like downtime and stuff like that. Okay, so I thought she was just like, I thought she okay, yeah, so I thought she was just like I'm not trying to make it a team healer, but no one else is healing, so it's like, oh wait, what? So yeah, anyway, yeah, okay, so I get what she's saying. So I think obviously the fixes are pretty much are good ideas, right? They're pretty straightforward with what her problems are and how they should fix them, right? Skills redirects more damage and reduces all damage for Dehya all throughout. Yeah, so it only lasts 6 seconds. Why not just make it her entire thing? Because that's supposed to be what she's doing in the first place. That's why she's there instead of a shield, right? Gives her more reason to be there. And right, she's still taking damage, so there is still risk involved. If you're still taking damage, there's still the possibility of you dying, especially if you take more damage or a lot of damage at once or one instance. So it's not like a self-perpetuating like machine or anything like that. It's not like she's taking damage and then just healing immediately. I believe she's supposed, and then this is already built into her kit, but she's already supposed to be healing at 40% of her health, right? So that could be, overcome by sudden huge instance of damage, which could happen when you're fighting like the three Magu Kenki and the Spiral Abyss, and like or just like if you're not careful for whatever reason, you could still die. So there is still that risk um of dying and when you run Dehya as like a means of, well, being your shield, quote unquote, or damage mitigation, quote unquote. But because of these problems, right, it's counterintuitive, all in all.
It doesn't feel sufficient. She's not and then she could be more damage from the active character. Like, she needs to be more self-sufficient. She will need improved self-healing as well. Okay, so does Dehya take the place of a shield? Is she as good as a shield? Like, in concept, she could be, but as she is now, with the current issues and awkward spots that it has, I would say not quite. So if her defense is mediocre, then that probably means she's made for offense, right? Like, she has to be good at something, right? That's what we're going to visit next. Now we will take a look at Dehya's offensive capabilities, and here we're going to tackle both her as a
Unfortunately, spoiler alert, no. That's why we're here.
First of all, let's take on her burst damage. And her burst is really emphasized as where she deals most of her damage. That's really all she does during her burst. She punches it out and then puts back the field if there's still a timer running, if there's still a duration left in it. But her burst is really meant for damage. And from the get-go, we can already identify some main problems, such as the multipliers are sad. It's one of the main things that players will notice is that she doesn't deal enough damage. Her damage is underwhelming. It really could have been better. And because of that, her multipliers are sad. She takes 4 seconds of field time to execute that damage. 4 seconds or more, actually. The damage payoff does not justify the duration. Basically, it takes too long for her to deal an amount of damage that just ends up being underwhelming. So what are some quick fixes for this? One is to simply improve her multipliers. In what direction or in what way would that be? This, I think, is where you can build C1 into her kit, which basically adds improved HP scaling.
Funny enough, I actually did get C1 for Dehya because I was trying to fulfill the battle pass stuff. Like, oh, if you do 50 wishes or 50 summons, you get extra points for your battle pass, right? And I was already like 2 away. So I was like, yeah, screw it. I'll just do two more wishes. Why not? I'm just building pity anyway at this point. But funny enough, I lost that pity already because I got Dehya again. Oh man, what is my luck, right? But but it is Dehya. So, but yes, I did get C1, which means more of her HP is scaling for more damage. So
I would want Dehya to have more HP scaling damage because it just streamlines her build into HP, giving her more damage and giving her more tanking utility. As of now, yeah, she does have dual attack and HP scaling, but I would want her C1 to be built into her kit where it just gives more HP scaling. The alternative, and this is an idea that's been floated around a lot, and I particularly like it, is that Dehya deals more damage based on the damage she takes, or based on the damage that's redirected to her. And I personally think this would be a nice way to tie her kit together because it gives an incentive for her to take damage, which is that she deals it back out as more damage. And this could be a stacking mechanic, this could just be like an accumulation mechanic, or damage reflection, or damage countering, whatever you want to call it. Now, would I take both the C1 and this thing? For balancing purposes, I would say it's really more of an either or, unless they just really make her base multipliers very low so that she would need both of these. I would be fine with one or the other. Just improve her damage is the bottom line. Then there's this open-ended question, kind of. I would like to know your preference on it, is whether or not to keep the current duration of her burst. So right now, her burst
Hmm.
is set at 4 seconds. Personally, I feel like it's a bit too short. You know, if Dia dealt the proportionate amount of damage to merit her field time, I feel like 4 seconds is a bit too short to enjoy her burst animation. In terms of DPS windows, the shortest we've had so far is Mr. Ayato with 6 seconds of skill field time. And then after that, we have Raiden with 7 seconds with her burst. So Dia is sitting at 4 seconds. Maybe it's because I'm not used to it yet because she's the first character who's done 4 seconds, but I feel like it could be longer. I wouldn't mind a 6-second burst from Dia. And then the alternative is to just make it a one-hit nuke. There's like a range. It could be longer, could be shorter.
I think the duration to me is, I think I would like I wouldn't be opposed to making it longer, but the overall problem is just that the damage is just it just doesn't pay off. I think that's a huge problem. So I think the big elephant in the room is just her scaling on the burst, of course. So I believe she knows that. So she's just kind of like putting it out there, like, hey, you want, for the sake of discussion, you think the burst should be longer, or they should um make it the same or something. And I would say I personally don't see it being an issue of like 4 seconds being too short or whatever. I think they need to really take care of the damage first. I think in the constellations that should be where you can get the longer burst, and then therefore you get more damage, right? Is it just a bonus? Um, longer burst animation, or longer burst duration in general, more punching and stuff like that, and then go into the finishing kick, dive kick. I think that's fine there. I think if they are going to extend the duration, I think that should be implemented into her constellations, and then take what she actually currently has in her current constellation stuff into consideration, right? Into her actual base kit. But the second point, though, absolutely right. I think I definitely can agree on of what they should do. Right? She's in the lore, in the story, she's a bodyguard, right? And so ideally, right, as a damage mitigation type of unit, I think it would be much more fitting also to have her have a bonus based off of how much damage she's taking in. I think that only makes more sense because of what this kit is trying to accomplish, I guess you could say. So yeah, so accumulate damage based on damage taken, right? So I think this should definitely be something like yeah, you do a little bit of work and then have a huge payoff via burst, or I think in the damage or something like that, or in her skill, excuse me. Maybe okay, so when can she take uh the bonus taken sort of type of damage bonus thing, right? I would say that should come into play whenever her skill is down, right? Whenever her circle is in the thing. So there is a sense of like, okay, you gotta manage your rotations and stuff like that. So you still have to do the work, but at the end it still pays off because of the damage you take and all that stuff, right? And it's still I would say still be very satisfying, right? And that gives me that idea in my head, right? Like, oh, what to call her, right? Like for a nickname. And I think her mechanic should make her be, or this ideal sort of like um hypothetical mechanic, make her sort of like the Raiden Shogun of pain, right? Because Raiden Shogun, what she does is, how her burst works is that when whenever a character expends their burst, right, it uses up energy. That energy being used goes into the sort of like gauge that Raiden has built into her, and that gauge is a bonus for her burst damage. So like your typical basic rotation with the Raiden Shogun team is that you do all your bursts with all the other characters, right? You use all the ults and bursts or whatever with all the other characters, and then ideally have Raiden Shogun last, and then because she has all that um energy sort of like accumulated in her gauge, when it's her turn, when she does the the um the sword for her burst, that does like extra juicy damage. The scaling on that is really good because um that's what everyone does, right? Everyone spends energy from their burst, and not to mention the multipliers are good or reasonable for Raiden Shogun, especially once you get more constellations. So that's like bonus upon what's built into her kit appropriately. So she's supposed to be like the sort of like the Archon of by nickname. She's supposed to be kind of like the Archon of energy, right? Because she takes energy from the character's bursts when they're spent, right? She doesn't drain them or anything, of course. And her whole idea is that she scales off of energy recharge, right? So that also means it enhances her intake of energy as she is doing her burst, right? It builds her burst back up, and then not to mention, right, her base kit is like a battery, right? So that means she's charging up her team's character bursts, and so in turn, when it's their turn, when you rotate back to them, they're gonna use their burst, another burst, and then another burst, and then when you go back to her, she uses her burst and she charges up again. So it's like this perpetuating cycle thing going on, and that's what makes Raiden Shogun so good, and makes her so universal, because everyone needs energy. Everyone needs energy recharge. Everyone needs that energy to make them useful on the field and stuff like that, giving them a reason why they should be on the team and stuff like that. Is with, of course, with the Raiden Shogun teams. And that really what makes her really good. Of course, she's an Archon, sure, but that's what really makes her in the first place really good. And so that sort of idea should have kind of like carry over to someone like Dehya, right? I mean, except that maybe because she's not an Archon, she has to take a risk, right? By taking in damage, right? So if you take in too much damage, obviously you die. But there's that risk and reward, right? For taking that risk, you should be rewarded with all this damage that's built up into her bonuses, right? For all towards her burst. So she should have been not only a damage mitigator, but also a main DPS, right? So that or a burst DPS, you could say, right? So you should be rewarded for all that damage taking in, as you do your rotations, right? And then your burst is how you kind of like conclude that cycle, and then you do the cycle again by rotating back to your first unit, and then they take in damage, and then back to your second unit, they take in damage as well, and then to your third unit, they take in damage as well. They're doing their thing, whatever, right? They're taking in damage as they're doing their thing, and then all that damage accumulated should go back to Dehya, does her thing, boom, right? Of course, as you put down the field and stuff like that. So I apologize if this is all confusing to anyone else who doesn't play Genshin and all that stuff and they're just listening in for whatever reason. But of course, it all makes sense once you do play the game. But basically, you do your you just do your rotation, and by the end of the rotation, something's built up, and you unleash it. Boom, big energy, right? Big energy, big damage, right? So that idea should have been something in mind for Dehya, except with damage instead of energy recharge. And of course, there's a price for that, right? You gotta risk your health. So that's why that should have been in mind, and you could definitely build a team around Dehya if that was the case. But that's not it. That's not what's happening here, unfortunately. That's why It's like, what's the point for Dehya?
I think the bottom line is that the damage is enough to justify the duration. But yeah, I'm just throwing it out there. I wouldn't mind a longer burst duration. The burst gameplay. We tackled the damage issues, but I feel like the gameplay is a whole other thing, honestly. And a lot of it roots from the fact that it is automated movement. So the automated movement, this is the first
I
time
see the
we've had a
second point of the
character that's
problem
had a state
square.
where
This
the
is
movement is automated, and then you're just supposed to like speed it up. Right, just increase the attack speed, and then that's all you're contributing to it. She does her own auto-targeting, and honestly, it's one of the things that makes it feel clunky as well. Because previous characters have been victim to Genshin's auto-targeting, it's not always reliable. We've seen this with Yoimiya, we've seen this with ranged characters. Like, auto-targeting can be janky. Honestly, I feel like just the automated movement might have introduced more problems than it was trying to solve. I think having some level of control over Dia's burst would just greatly benefit it. And an adjacent problem is that jumping cancels Dia's burst. There are a few ways to look at it, alright? I've seen some perspectives that say like, okay, it's okay that Dia's jumping cancels her burst because, first of all, why would you jump during her burst? Well, you could get frozen, and the way to get out of frozen is to jump. You can also argue like, at least jumping is a way to end the burst prematurely and then give your other units field time. If you wanted to cancel the burst early and give your other teammates field time, like, just swap. No other character with a special state has a toggle button. This jump canceling the state doesn't happen to Xiao. Obviously, it doesn't happen to Raiden, it doesn't happen to Ito. This is the first time we've ever seen it happen on a character. Restricting movement in that sense, I feel like, is again a problem that we didn't need to experience or even have. And if we're talking about burst toggles or a button to toggle a burst state, just let it be the burst button, you know? Just let it be the same button that actually casts the burst. And the very easy and straightforward fix to this entire thing is to just make Dia's burst a stance change. Like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Just let it be a stance change that allows for manual movement that also allows us to jump during her burst. And I feel like that would solve a lot of problems. Now, one interaction in particular is that Dia's burst currently doesn't work or doesn't proc Xingqiu and Yelan's burst. Naturally,
right.
this is something that is pretty bothersome. Because if you want a pyro character to be a vaporized DPS, you pair them with Xingqiu. And the fact that you can't do this with Dia to the full extent, it hurts her. It hurts her damage. It hurts her teams. Although I do want to propose a counter argument, and this could be like me coping, this could like be me as a devil's advocate. I hope that in the future, it means there is a Hydro character that will come along that is as good, if not better, of a Hydra enabler as Xingqiu, and can work with Dia, or works in perhaps more universal aspects as Xingqiu. Because from the beginning of Genshin times, Xingqiu has been glued to pyro carries, because he's simply that good. And I wouldn't put it past Hoyoverse to want to start creating a group of characters that doesn't rely on Xingqiu. Of course, it means that they're going to rely on a different Hydro character, and until that Hydro character comes out, this particular group of characters is going to feel terrible. But I think that down the line, especially since we are expanding characters constantly, maybe there is space for that. Maybe there is space for a Xingqiu adjacent, a Xingqiu alternative, you know, someone who will pair very, very well with Dia and make her a good vaporized DPS. Again, I could be coping really hard, but yeah, honestly, if it's not meant to be, if Dia isn't meant to synergize with Xingqiu, I really hope that there's a good reason for it.
I don't know. I mean, I find this whole like not synchronizing with Xingqiu or Xingqiu slash Yilon, right? Another character who has a pretty similar burst. Not synergizing with Dehya. I mean, I can kind of see it from a marketing standpoint because they're incentivizing to draw more characters from more banners in the future. So it's like, because like, yeah, at this point, everyone should have Xingqiu. Everyone should have or not everyone, but like more people should have Elon, right? Because Elon's a 5 star, Xingqiu's a 4 star. But nonetheless, you should have one of these characters at this point. So Xingqiu is really good as a 4 star unit who applies Hydro really well. So that's why he's been helping out with the Pyro DPS and stuff like that with the vaporized reactions. So yeah, of course, from a business standpoint, um, they're probably doing this because they want to give you reason in their eyes. They want to give you a reason to go for the newer banners in the future. They're kind of like attention. It seems to me like they're intentionally cock blocking you, so that way, besides drawing out the 5 star of that new banner, they want you even give you more reason to go for that banner because it'll have the new 4 star Hydro character that will work better with someone like Dehya, right? But another case, but but we need to go back to the whole thing with Dehya. She sucks, so no one's gonna use Dehya. So what's the whole point? So you just might as well have Xingqiu slash Elon synchronizing with or synergizing with Dehya because her shit already sucks, you know. And even I would say even with the new Hydro 4 star or whatever the fuck unit in the future, I think Dale still sucks. I think she still sucks. So because it's like we it all leads to the problem back to Leia's kit being just kind of butt backwards, man. That's kind of how I see it. But it's sort of obvious that they're doing this for reasons that are very, live servicey and gotcha ask and whatever. It just seems like they're trying to make you have you have one more reason to go for the banner, and that's to draw for that 4 star character, the high 4 star Hydro character that could potentially help out Dehya, quote unquote. But I don't know if a Hydro character is gonna necessarily save Dehya in the first place, because I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna go to my other DPS units, like fucking Al them, So I'll just stick with Al them, Xingqiu, Shinobu, and then either Nahida, Zhongli, or whatever. That's my go-to team. Like I'm not gonna bother with Dehya, so it's the whole point in the first place
I really hope it's something
of
that
all
will be
this.
solved down the line. Later.
But oh yeah, let's talk about this stuff too, right? So the automated movement, jumping cancel, yeah. So I think her burst overall needs to work like Arataki Ito and like all the other like stance change characters, right? Who basically um you just like go around attack like normal, right? Except that your attacks will be a little different. Like Arataki Ito has a club instead of this claymore, right? Same with Raiden Shogun. When she bursts, instead of a polearm or spear or lance, she pulls out the sword, right? The sword. So that's why it's called stance change. So I think it should have been just a stance change kind of burst. Just have her punch. Have her punches have that fire thing, right? And then yeah, just so that the jumping can be allowed, right? Whatever, and then have the manual movement, right? So yeah, I think definitely the stance change is something that could have been a simple fix. It's just like why not do that for someone like Dehya, right? So I think what in their mind, they wanted to make it like into a hyper combo, right? Like in the Marvel games, right? Or Marvel versus Capcom games. You know, it's not like it's like an animation. They wanted to make it overall like an animation as you know as a I guess as a change um from all the stance change characters we've had, you know, over the past while. So I think they were trying to make this just like a hyper combo, and you can it even comes with the feature of like, oh, you want to do a little more damage or be a little faster, mash that button, right? Like just like Cable Super, right? In Marvel 2, if you want to make his Bane do more damage, hit that punch, hit that button. That's why people do all you know, pretend this is a fight stick, right? That's why you see people do all this, right? They do the slap, the uh they do the infamous sort of like mashing all that stuff, right? With the fingers and stuff like that. I actually went back by accident, but it's okay. We were right here, so anyway, so it's fine. So, um, so that's kind of like what they had in mind. Maybe that's kind of like one of my theories as to what their intention was. But I think overall, it just doesn't serve well, or it just doesn't translate well at this point because we're so used to having these sort of bursts with the stance change. So just make it a stance change. It's as simple as that, I think. So, and if it were a hyper combo, let's just say, right? Um, I think the jumping to cancel thing, um, don't make it a jump cancel. If you want to cancel the burst, then switch to another teammate. I think that's a pretty simple change if they really wanted to cancel it. And then because she's pocketing the what do you call it? The circle, right? The circle should be back onto the field, right? Just like as it were before.
because he's simply that good. Or
Eh,
expand Dia and make her a good vaporized DPS. Again, I could be coping really hard, but yeah, honestly, if it's not meant to be, if Dia isn't meant to synergize with Xingqiu, I really hope that there's a good reason for it. I really hope it's something that will be solved down the line. Let me know if I'm crazy or not crazy. Anyway, another particular comment I've been seeing is that Dia's burst should cost less. I don't think that's a core issue.
this animation, man. Oh, it's so sad. Oh, and I paused it right at a very good time. Oh man. Her energy costs.
There are two main factors that kind of lead to this sentiment that I can see. First is that the damage doesn't pay off. It doesn't pay off in the duration, and it also doesn't pay off with the energy cost. Dia's burst currently costs 70 energy, and for the damage it deals, right, it might as well only cost 40. And the second thing is that Dia has really bad energy issues. This makes her burst cost feel even bigger than it really is, because Dia just doesn't have a good way to get energy back. When Dia does her burst, which is supposed to be her dedicated field time, she literally picks up her skill field and loses her means of generating particles. So she can't benefit from her own particles while she is doing her field time. The one thing that actually does regenerate energy for her is locked behind her C4. The fact that
Yeah,
Dia has
more
damage on her
constellation fixes. It's terrible.
she also has energy issues, means that you have to relegate so many ER stats to her just for her to burst reliably. And of course, at that point, you would feel like her burst should just cost less. I think the alternative is simply, aside from making it deal more damage, just give her better energy mechanics. Build her C4 into her base kit. Just let her regenerate energy as she is punching. Let her get back some flat energy, and that would already be a massive help. Turn it into a new passive. An alternative is to give her some means of keeping the particle generation on. Whether that's keeping her skill field on or something else, just like let her take in her own pyro particles.
Yeah, her skill also has a problem too, where it procs every 2.5 seconds, which is considered slow and stuff like that, and it hardly gives any energy back too. it hardly generates any energy. So as it procs, I think it should offer more energy if it doesn't already. So
It receives some energy every time damage is redirected to her. And I think that's pretty interesting. It could be its own constellation, it could be an
yeah, and I think an idea for a constellation to replace some of those lost constellations, yes,
alternative passive.
should be like, oh, bonus energy for this any instance of damage taken or something like that, or the damage mitigation, right? Any instance of that should just be bonus energy going back into Dea's burst.
That gives her more
That definitely
energy.
should be a
The
constellation
bottom
because it's a
line
bonus.
is to just let her get energy,
Yeah.
whatever or however it is, and her burst will feel like it costs an appropriate amount of energy. Next, we will tackle Dia's skill damage.
Oh boy.
Dia's skill damage mainly suffers from also low multipliers. There is a sentiment that Dia's main damage source should basically be Burgeon. And while she can proc Burgeons, I really don't think she was meant for that.
So if anyone is a little confused by the word burgeon, burgeon is the elemental reaction that is combined with not only with hydro and dendro, which creates the seeds, as you can see with the green thing, right? Burn me, mommy, yeah. Um, so yeah, so hydro and dendro creates the seeds, and then burgeon is when you apply pyro to those green seeds. So in turn, it'll be like like a fiery explosion, like a bomb basically, and that'll do some damage, right? So that's one reaction with these dendro seeds or blooms as you call them that you can create. The other one is hyper bloom, which is basically electro instead of pyro. And what that one does is it creates like a homing shot. And unfortunately for Burgeon, hyper bloom seems to be the more powerful one. So that's why you're a little more incentivized to uh to run an electro team rather than a pyro team if you're gonna run dendro too. So like a dendro electro team with a hydro in there too, because you obviously need to regenerate the seeds, stuff like that, or even for that to happen over with someone with a team that has a pyro in it. But still, this is kind of sad because yes, as you kind of see, there is a character
And
who
I
will be
also
mentioned.
don't think she is great at that either. Because her skill procs have a 2.5-second interval, and this does limit Burgeon potential. Okay, it's not a matter of that 2.5 seconds is good because it allows you to create more dendro cores before she explodes them all at once. Because if you didn't know, enemies have a limit of only taking 2 instances of dendro core damage every 0.5 seconds. If you explode all these dendro cores at once, and you don't have enough enemies to take all the damage instances that those deal, you are essentially wasting dendro core damage. You're essentially wasting Burgeons. Which is why Toma works so well, because he procs them often. He gets the Burgeon damage often, the frequency is there, the enemies will take it every second because he's proccing Burgeons every second. And yeah, Dia's Burgeon capabilities are most definitely outclassed by a 4-star, by Toma. I really don't think she was made for Burgeon, and I don't think she's great at it, even if it's one way to play her. Some simple fixes.
Yeah, so those are pretty straightforward fixes as well. See, what I wanted to mention here is that I thought Dale was gonna be like the Burgeon sort of like go to, like the premier Burgeon unit, right? Or hero, or whatever you want to call it. Because there's another character called named Nilu. Nilu or Nilo is a Hydro unit. It's a 5-star Hydro sword user that exclusively has a kit built for these blooms, and she has her own special version of bloom. I forget what it's called, but she has her own version of bloom with the seeds, and once they explode, they do bonus damage, right? They have a higher damage multiplier thanks to Nilo's kit, and they explode with more damage somehow. Or if you know just let them sit there, they explode on their own. When that happens, you know it's going to they're going to um explode with more damage, right? That's the point being. So that was part of Nilo's thing. I thought Dale was gonna be like the pyro version of that. So I thought she's gonna have multipliers exclusively to help enhance the Burgeon reaction. I thought that's the unit she was going to be, but they're trying to make her into a damage mitigation unit. But we all know how that turned out, and it's not great.
That could go either way. Is one, make her skill procs faster, even if it has low multipliers. Then
And it's just so sad that the fact that she is outclassed in the Burgeon side of things by a 4-star unit, which I don't think who is also specifically built for Burgeon, but who just happens to do Burgeon pretty well because of his pyro application. So that's all the more sad, right? Like all these coincidences aside and stuff like that. I mean, when you put these two together, it's like, man, you just can't believe a 5-star is being outclassed by a 4-star in this matter and such. It's pretty fucking sad if you think about it. You know, Tomo was kind of like the joke for a long time because he's a 4-star unit, and I think he just kind of came out at a certain point. It's kind of just like, so what, because he was initially came out as a shield unit who procs with pyro, and that was like kind of all he was, and his multipliers for the shield, exactly weren't like great, but they're okay. It's just wasn't great. That's why he was just only okay. That's why that was kind of like the joke of for Toma. He's just kind of okay, even though in the story he's kind of cool, but gameplay wise he was just kind of like okay. But ever since Denjo came out, right? Because you can create these seeds, and then you can proc the Virgin. He definitely climbed up there higher on the tier list because of this whole thing. Dendro helped out a lot of characters, including Toma, which is kind of funny. And also, especially with Shinobu. Shinobu is another 4-star unit, Electro at that, and she definitely has been shining for me as a 4-star unit within my roster. Like she's absolutely been slapping. And then Toma definitely slapping harder from before, and he is slapping harder than Dehya right now, man. And that's really sad.
that would make her a more reliable Virgin trigger. Or two, keep it as
Because
slow as it
Dehya is definitely the
and
more
just make
popular
the
character,
multipliers
man.
higher. Just let each hit harder. You can't have a damage dealing thing that is both slow and weak. Okay,
Yeah.
pick one. Just pick one. It cannot be both, or else it will just suck. So to recap, where we have gotten thus far, Dia's defensive abilities have flaws. Her offensive abilities also have flaws because they don't deal enough damage.
Right.
And it's really unclear what she is supposed to excel at. And currently, or so far, we've been looking at fixing individual aspects of her kit, which is great because that's how we've been tackling it. We've been tackling each issue individually. But now I want to talk about introducing a cohesive kit, trying to not just look at the parts, but the whole, and see if we can come up with something that makes sense, that seems solid, that seems more finished than it does now. To guide us with that, though, I think we should first take into consideration the standards of standard characters. I'm sure a lot of us were hoping or...
Oh yeah, so this is also another thing to consider, or that is worth noting, right? Yes, she is a standard character. She is going to be available throughout the rest of the time of Genshin because she's going to be part of the standard banner, which means you can get her even though she's not on the banner, along with these other 6 characters, right? You got, you already have another Pyro Claymore user, D-Luke, who uh funny enough is looking pretty good, you know, now that Deya's in here, right? You know, you kind of now appreciate what D-Luke is bringing in, even though D-Luke has been there like ever since like day one. He's pretty basic, but his multipliers are at least decent, so that means he's therefore better than Deya for right now, unless they are planning to by miraculous or by a miracle buff
Or who
Deya.
wanted Dia to be a limited character. I personally did. Like, I thought she was going to be a limited character. I really wanted her to be pretty special. But just for the sake of this discussion, I think I'm going to keep this parameter of her being a standard character, and so she should be standard character level. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean she should be bad. Okay, well, let's get that straight. Just because you're a standard character doesn't mean you're a bad character. Standard character kits are just relatively straightforward. Like, if we look at our damage dealers here, that's pretty much all they do. They deal damage. They don't really have any off-field presence. Tignari has off-field presence in the sense that his taunt skill can last even while he's off-field. But really, he's just using it for himself because as a ranged character, he can benefit a lot from a taunt ability. And if we look at standard characters, like, they are sufficient in their role. They can get the job done, and they're pretty good. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best at their role.
Chi-Chi is probably the only one that can be considered bad. But I think, but even so, with Deya, now that Deya is going to come into the standard banner soon-ish, Chi-Chi's gonna, I guess, also be looking good too, I guess, because she can heal, right? She can heal. Well, that's all she can do, is heal.
Tend to be like the premium for that, but at the same time, standard characters should still at least be decent. Let's keep this in mind as we move along to the revised kits. The first revised kit I want to introduce is one that is damage oriented. First of all, this kit focuses on improving her DPS potential essentially, whether that's becoming a raw pyro damage dealer or becoming a burgeon trigger. Could go both ways, both output damage. So starting with her skill, I would emphasize, or I would want that aspect of accumulating extra damage based on damage taken. We mentioned this earlier, I'm bringing this into the revised kit now. I think it's cool. I think it would be a very nice unifying aspect of her kit that makes it, or that gives it a bit more purpose and a bit more sense. The next thing is that I would want her skill to deal coordinated damage every 1.5 seconds, even if it has low multipliers. And this, as you can tell, is really for Burgeon proccing. Some optional things that I would like to see, but could be left aside for balancing purposes, is that 1, her skill delivers the highest interruption resistance all throughout. It doesn't have like varying levels of interruption resistance, it just gives the highest from the get-go. Next is built-in damage reduction upon skill cast. Even if this is just for herself, even if it's not that much, I would prefer it to just be built into her skill and built into her field instead of it having the extra steps that it does currently. Moving on to her burst, this is my preference. Again, I would want her burst phase to last 6 seconds. So she gets 6 seconds of damage dealing time. She is punching, 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 and I think that's a considerable amount to have her on field enjoy her animation.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, like I said before, I think the 6 second thing or whatever, how long it could be, I think that should be in the constellation. I think because, you know, it's a bonus. It feels like a bonus at that point. Again, I think 4 seconds to me, it's fine. The problem, again, the root of the problem is that it feels like you're just punching with like, with, like your SpongeBob, right? It's like if SpongeBob is doing the punching for you right now.
And feel like she was really there, like her presence was really there. Just remove the automated targeting and hitting. Just let it be manual, just let it be a stance change, just let it be. That would give us more control. It could potentially solve the jump canceling her burst problem. It could solve a bunch of problems. Here, again, we get to see the passive that unleashes extra damage based on the damage taken. So this would be the thing that kind of strings her skill and her burst together. She accumulates damage taken during her skill. When she pops out her burst, she unleashes it all. And then, Let her burst regenerate flat energy and healing for herself with every punch landed. Basically her C4. Like I said before, I would want her C4 to be built into her own base kit. Makes her
Okay,
more
so
self-sufficient,
healing.
conserve
Okay, I
energy, more
definitely.
reliable. It lets
So
her
kind of like Hu Tao, like that's already built into her basic kit. It's like she can heal herself with a burst because she's also about having her. She's like about losing HP to gain more damage. Kind of like a similar concept here, right? Taking in damage, to give out more damage, right?
heal
It's
energy.
we already have a concept of sorts. That's with Hu Tao. That's funny because she's a she's a pyro unit, 5-star power unit, DPS.
She is meant to
We've
burst
already have
frequent
that.
rotation
It
without
works.
much hassle. Now, I would personally prefer a damage-oriented Dia. She is fierce. She's a lion. She looks like she's made to deal damage. Like, that is her role. That is... We want to see her fierce, you know, we want to see her beat up bad guys because she's just that badass of a character. I think that is the most consistent thing with her character. But of course, for the sake of alternatives, for the sake of flexibility, I do want to entertain her being support oriented. Dia is a bodyguard. If she
Right.
supports well, if her defense and tanking is effective, at least it still has some consistency with her character, and at least it still delivers some purpose better than it does currently. So with this second revised kit, support-oriented utilities. The big emphasis here is letting her skill be like very good support, essentially. This focuses on Dia being a mostly off-field unit where a bunch of the support utilities are built into her skill, and then she's not that concerned about dealing damage or having a damage payoff so much. First thing, higher damage percent redirection. So basically, let her redirect more damage towards herself than she currently does. Again, right now she's at 50%. If that goes higher, upwards of 70%, I think that would be a good state to be in. Next, have the highest interruption resistance golden forged form all throughout. Again, I feel like there shouldn't be extra steps or weird timers to go with that. Next, build in the C2, which mainly emphasizes the skill duration extension. Let her skill have very, very good uptime. Better uptime than it does now, at least. And with that, build in the damage reduction for herself upon cast, even if it's not that much. Okay, so we're after both the redirection being built in and the damage reduction being built in. Let her tank all that damage. It's her job. Let her deal the coordinated attacks every 1.5 seconds, which can have low multipliers again. I think that this is something that I would keep even if Dia is support oriented, because it's at least something that Toma has, right? Like, Toma was built to be a shielder, or his kit is geared to be a shielder, but the convenience of his shield procs and the additional pyro procs that come with it, it makes him be a good Burgeon damage dealer. So I think that Dia, even if she were to have a more support-oriented kit, it would be a really nice touch if she still had more frequent coordinated attacks to be a Burgeon damage dealer. And then to further complement her damage, even if her damage isn't meant to be that much, still give her like the accumulated extra damage bonus based on damage taken. So it can be to a lesser degree than her damage-oriented kit. I still think it would be a nice thing to use to at least tie her damage sponging together with whatever damage she will deal. It doesn't have to be that great. Her multipliers don't have to be great, but I think it would still be a cool thing to have. And then going...
I think, yeah, as long as she has something to go off of the whole damage taking and for more damage thing, I think. I mean, as long as the multipliers are decent, then I would say, yeah, that it'd still be a nice thing. And I think, she should be a unit where you can kind of go either or. Like, maybe if you try to do a bit of both, okay, have some decent payoff. But if you build her to be an attacker, more DPS, definitely, feel like should pay off. If you make her into a more support-oriented unit, that also should have some sort of payoff as well. But at the end of it, though, I think her main gimmick should be that she takes in damage to deal more damage. I think that should have been what she is all about to make her stand out from the rest of the units. Because if she's just another pyro DPS unit, it's like, okay, well then, whatever, you know what I mean? But make her a little more special by doing the whole taking in damage to give out more damage. That should have been something um be considered, right? When designing Dehya, especially having her being a bodyguard and everything. She's willing to take a bullet for you, right? Sort of thing. Make that into her gameplay gimmick, right?
To her
Somehow.
burst, if Dia is meant to be mainly an off-field character, then I'd be okay with her burst just being a one-hit nuke. And using it is also optional. It could be a burst that she doesn't have to use every rotation. She could pop it once every 2 rotations, or just pop it when.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be an option because you're especially if her damage mitigation is really good, and then it's just like, okay, well, I mean, I'll just make her into a damage mitigation character, or you can build her thing to be all about more of like, okay, I'm gonna take in damage, I'm gonna deal more damage, that type of thing. I mean, right, right. It could be, of course, be a little tricky with the multiplication, I guess. You know, I guess that
When there's
depending
an
on
emergency,
in some cases,
when
but
you need iframes or something. Or maybe when she's like maxed out the damage that she can accumulate, so that she has little to no ER concerns, so that you don't even need to think about building ER on her. Just focus on building HP so she can tank, or building EM so she can burgeon. And then again, just to tie the
yeah, I think as long as her burst is tied to just like, um, oh, bonus damage for taking in damage, right? It's not like, oh, this burst is based off of max HP or how much attack she has. I think it should be just about um, the damage taken in. That should be the driver for the burst damage, I think.
the skill and burst together. There's a passive that interacts with her skill and interacts with her burst and tries to make her kit a bit more interesting, a bit more cohesive. Again, doesn't have to be to the same degree as the damage oriented kit that I theorized earlier. And yeah, those were my main ideas for Dia's revised kit. Again, I don't know if this will ever happen. I personally don't really see it ever happening, and we might just have to deal with the fact that it is as it is now. But as one of my Twitch viewers said yesterday, thinking about Dia's revised kit is cathartic. Like, even if you can probably accept that it will never happen, it's cathartic to just like try to revise one in your head and then dream about what Dia could have been. You know, what she could have been good at. So now I want to ask you, how would you reimagine Dia's kit? Would it look like how I imagined it? Would it be something completely different? Would you tweak a few things? Let me know down in the comments. Again, we are in class. This is an open discussion. I want to hear your thoughts and your opinions. We are wrapping up. I'm almost done coping. I swear I'm almost done being in the bargaining phase. As we're wrapping up, I want to give special thanks to a few groups and individuals. First of all, thank you Twitch chat for giving me feedback on my presentation. I did work on this presentation live on Twitch. If you don't follow me yet on Twitch, or if you want to catch me streaming, I always have the link to my Twitch down in the description. It's Sevi_plays. Thank you also to my mod, Valid, for the extra memes. He gave me some extra memes to stick into this presentation, and I'm very grateful for it. Thank you, Canva, for this template. Canva, you're awesome. You're very convenient. You saved my student life. And then thank you to all the players, TCs, CCs, everyone who has like given takes on Dia's issues, who's tested Dia, who has discovered other issues and bugs and like gameplay interactions, that everyone who's like weighed in, tried to organize info, tried to organize the list of things that could be improved. I am very grateful for like all the public information you've provided. And last of all, I want to thank Dia for existing. Without Dia, we would not be here.
That's one way to put it. It's like, oh, thanks for being here so we can kind of shit on you and make such content.
Of all time. So with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, Consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all soon. Take care!
Thank you, Sevi, for the wonderful video. It was I would say I already liked the video. Okay. Okay. So I think overall, I definitely agree on most points. I think the one that I disagree on, that comes to mind is definitely the whole the the Xing Cho thing and the reasons why they're doing it and stuff like that. Um, I feel like, I mean, the root of the problem is just data, right? I think the whole like Xingqiu Elon lack of synergy thing is just kind of like the cherry on top at this point, right? And then there's the point of the, oh, but what about future characters, right? Helping out Dea and stuff like that. Kind of like a similar instance with Shinobu and Toma, right? With Denjo that came in at one point and helping them out. I don't think unless they have hydro characters that are specifically for characters like Dea, where they're gonna just give them more multipliers and stuff like that, like HP multipliers or whatever the hell. Maybe that could be a thing. That's like that is one possibility, I guess. But even with that, that still doesn't fix the inherent problems that Dea still has, like the weird unsynchronizations with some of her things, like a golden form state, her self healing thing, the actual damage redirection thing doesn't even like happen all the time. It only happens like what for this amount of seconds or whatever. Yeah, so for 6 seconds, right? So damage is not actually reduced unless passive is active for that which lasts 6 seconds. So that of itself is a problem. So I think there's more issues of Dea within Dea herself than there is with the whole like Hydro thing. So yeah, mostly on Dea. The Hydro thing is just a cherry on top, I would say. So I think that's probably the only like in apparent disagreement I do have with Sevi's like presentation. But really, other than that, though, she basically covered everything else, all the important bits of Dea's problems, right? And the ideas that could come into that could possibly be a thing, but let's not hold our breath for Dea. I think overall the way Hoyover sees it is that, oh, if you get the constellations, I'll help fix her, right? So yeah, and because she's gonna be a standard character, you have still have a chance to get her in the future. Yay! Which is kind of scummy because people at Hoyoverse, they know that Dea is really popular. They know that she's really cool. People really do like her, and they know it. That's why and there's a interesting note that I guess left out, probably because it's more speculation than anything, of course. But it was slated that she was going to be a 4-star character, which is kind of funny enough. In essence, yeah, her kit does kind of feel like a 4-star character, but they made into a 5-star character because people really liked her. Ever since she was first introduced, people liked her design. It's like, whoa, who is she? She's pretty fucking cool. Um, who is she? And stuff like that. Her design alone already was like winning people's hearts over. And then soon as she appeared in the story, yeah, Afro, what's up? As she appeared in the story, people were really liking her. So they knew what they're doing in that sense, and so they made it into a 5-star so that people can spend that moolah on their first debut on her banner. And but they did jack shit about her kit. So they did not they did not do purposefully, probably likely on a good job on making her feel like a 5 star. So if you want to get Data all fixed up, whatever, oh, you gotta pretty much get her constellations, right? So, I think, yeah, it's just kind of sad, especially for the Dea wanters and havers. Well, actually, the wanters, well, they're at least they can change their minds last minute. But the havers, they already have her. That means they spent their primo gems like me, you know, on her to get her, to try her, and experience the sadness that comes with Dea. So oh, Afro, I thought you seen me with my haircut. But anyway, um the whatchamacall, yeah, like I got her, right, and I got lucky because I didn't, it didn't take me that much to get her, so I got lucky just to have her, right, just for the sake of like just having her. And as soon as my friend who really wanted it was like, dude, she is ass. I was like, oh, oh man. It was already kind of looking bad though as soon as her kit was public, right? Or was known to the internet. So it was yeah. I guess we had it coming, man. But you know, a lot of people didn't want to believe it, but you know, it's here. It's a reality of it, and that's there, man. I can't believe they did this to just to such an awesome character. She got robbed. She got super robbed, man. So it's kind of sad to see. So, anyways, if I haven't said already, great video, Sevi. Thank you very much for the video. I really appreciate your hard work on it, especially with the presentation thing. I think that's pretty nice. So yeah. That's all I got for this reaction video with Sevi's video. So hopefully they fix Dea, but I'm not gonna hold my breath on it. I think that's their idea with Dea, man. It's just, oh, she's here. Get her constellations. You can kind of definitely do that over time because she's going to be in the standard rotation.